The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
In the Indian Ocean, there's a small island called Reunion. But coming from that island is one of the greatest squash players of all time, a former world number one, a World Open winner, Thierry Lincou. And guess what? Thierry is this week's guest on The Best in the World with Richard Parr. Thierry is now a coach at MIT, yes, that famous university in the United States, and he talks about his new job and how he recruits players from around the country to come and play for MIT. He talks about what he knows now as a coach that he wishes he knew as a player. And we discuss his whole career from his early life to spending time in England and in Egypt. We talk about how he had to adapt to the physical nature of the sport and also what he would do to mentally prepare for big games throughout his career. We also talk about the importance of rackets and exactly how he would like the specification of his racket when he was playing. And it's a really light-hearted, fun chat with Thierry as he reveals how he got his nickname TT in the sport. And I must say, this is the third squash player I've had on the programme, and all three of them have been absolutely delightful. And Thierry, the 2004 World Open champion, was certainly that on this week's Best in the World with Richard Parr. Before I get to the conversation with Thierry, I just want to say about 99 Designs. It's a design website that I personally use. I've got a logo designed on there, and you can get other things designed such as websites or business cards or even posters and banners. Just go to sportacino.com/99 designs. That's our own special link. So if you do end up using their service, some of the money which goes to them will come back to us. So you will be supporting this podcast. And if you're not happy with their service, they do have a money back guarantee. Go and check it out, sportacino.com/99 designs. All right, it's time to learn from the best, the very best, the best in the world. This week, it's Thierry Lincou.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Thierry Lincou, welcome to The Best in the World with Richard Parr, a former world squash number one, a World Open champion. So great to have you on the programme. Of course, you've been retired for a few years now and are now a coach at MIT. How's the coaching been going for you the last few years?
Yeah, hello, Richard. It's been my third season over here at MIT, and it was, just a new career, just a new opportunity, and then I'm still learning, getting better at it month after month, and the team is really improving. So really happy, and it's a lot about recruiting, as maybe you know. So not only the training part is essential, training, coaching, but also recruiting good players.
Okay, so what specifically are you looking for when you're recruiting? Are there a few things that really needs to be ticked off the list, and maybe what is the one thing which perhaps not most people would realise that you're looking for?
So in US, college sport in general, it's really big, and squash is fairly new to amongst all those university sports. MIT works a little differently because this is a school specialized in sciences and like computer science and technologies. So I'm a little limited in terms of really purely recruiting as I wanted to, because those guys needs to meet certain requirements, academic requirements. So have the grades and everything. Then what I want to look for is, first of all, a good personality, but then a good potential. So start with a great technique, and also a good fitness. So speed is one, and of course endurance, and I'm trying to assess if, from the videos, and if I go and see them in tournaments, if they're mentally, strong and focused. Yeah.
You mentioned fitness there, and when I was doing my research about you, your Wikipedia page had you down as one of the greatest lateral movers in the game, as well as being one of the fittest players in the history of squash. Are those things that you can teach? Can you teach speed?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a tough question because we all know that if you're not born with a certain amount of fast twitch fibers, or fast fibers, you're gonna be struggling to being very explosive and quick. I do believe you can still improve if you're born slow. You're gonna be able to improve a little bit, but you're never gonna become Fast and Furious. So you can improve that specific speed within the specific movement, of squash. And even with my slow guys or clients, they can still improve that specific speed in doing a lot of and movement and working that fluid movement too.
Okay, very interesting. With everything that you said you're learning all the time as a coach, and obviously you probably learnt all the way through your playing career as well. What do you know now that you wish you knew at the start of your playing career?
Yeah, so as you know, I was born on an island, on a French island. So I'm a little different from what you could have as in squash. I mean, in squash, those champions in general, they are from the Commonwealth countries, because the sport is really came from England. Okay, so I was born. First of all, he was the first guy to become world champion from a non Commonwealth countries. And coming from an island, it was. I had limited access to a lot of a lot of things in terms of seeing good games or seeing some champions. I was pretty much isolated. I wish at my time I could have had more access to some, through the internet, to some videos, to some. To have a bit more exposure, to learn faster, and maybe have a little more. I think to develop a little bit more attacking skills as well, and deception from a little bit earlier on my career. I was doing this, but till the end of my career, and I wish I could have maybe integrate more of a attacking, more of variety in really attacking the front of the court. Yeah.
When you don't have that culture of squash in your country, when you do have those limitations, what do you think about it then? Being in your home country, being in your island, what was it about you and being there that made you the champion that you are? What were the things you learnt in those early years which you think helped? And in some ways were perhaps an advantage to, say, others who go through a structured system, say, in the United States or in the UK?
Yeah. So because of that situation, I had to be from an early age, and specifically from 14 years old, I decided to team up with two guys from France. And we really try to not copy what was existing, in the world. And we really try to work a little differently. And it was a little bit more scientific, all my fitness program, all my physical workouts was really precise and even in a way my movement was. We try to do a little different from the others, really being more efficient around the court. And I think that mentally being away from the rest of the world gave me a lot of strength and dedication. I think that was really my strongest point was my mental, the fitness, and my ball control overall. And I think that's what I'm trying to to transfer to my people.
Fantastic. Again, I want to just rewind a little bit further because it's just come into my mind. But when the country isn't renowned for its squash, it doesn't have these structures. How did you get started in the sport in the first place?
Yeah, so the squash was booming in the 80s in general, like in Europe, even in France, and Réunion Island where I lived, it's like by Madagascar, which is a good 12 hours from France, like flying.
Yeah.
So my dad built the first squash court on the island in like an abandoned factory, and with a couple of friends, they put up that squash court. It was really maybe not the right size, but it didn't really matter. So, and anyway, I lived really close to that place, and I was there pretty much all the time with my brother and my family and friends. And that's really how, with the love of the game, that I was able to develop a lot of like things by myself and understanding stuff. And that's how it started. And yeah.
And I've read that after you turned around 17, 18, you did decide to travel and improve your knowledge of the sport in various places such as England, Cairo. I've got Marseille down here as well. What did you learn by taking in those different cultures? Is there one thing which helped advance your game during those years?
Yeah, so I love going to England because I had a few really good friends, well, especially from like Waddingford, Reading. I used to go there when I moved. So then at 17 years old, after school, I moved to Paris just to like relocate myself and to be more, it was much more practical. And then from there, I was going to England and learn a lot from the guys, the sense of, being very competitive. It's like that discipline that the guys, they had. That fighting spirit, the discipline, all the guys were really fit. That's really what I learned from that England, England squash. And then going to Egypt, I think there was so much like variety of styles, and I learned a lot just playing with a lot of different guys with different techniques to really improve my perception, my reading of the game. Because it is all about, pace, and like in every sport, I differentiate, the top 50 from, 10, so 20 to 10 to 1 is with that capacity of executing everything a little faster and understanding and processing a little faster. So Egypt was good because those guys were like fast and furious. They were like hitting with different techniques and with a much more aggressive squash. And I think that was really beneficial for me too.
Fantastic. And, you mentioned physicality and everything like that. I read that you're one of the nicest players on the tour when you were playing. And was it a difficulty of getting used to some of that physicality going on?
I learned not the hard way, but I had to to learn how to be a little physical sometimes, because this is a sport where, unlike tennis or table tennis or badminton, there's no net, there's no separation between the two opponents. So you need to share that space, and you need to not only play your shot, play the ball, and create access for the other guy, which is sometimes complicated with the speed of of the game, you don't necessarily have time to really like move out from your position, and thus there could be some like like little conflicts or little bumps on the way. So yes, I had a hard time coming from an island where it was a different philosophy and the mentality is a little different, to adapt myself to be a bit more not mean but a bit more to accept that dimension here on the court, and to be prepared, just being prepared like psychologically to sometimes having to touch the guy, or to accept the contact as well. And then I was fine. Then I was fine with that. Yeah.
Was there anyone in particular who, when you saw that you were playing with them, you're like, oh, I don't want to face this guy. I know it's going to be rough today.
There was, I'm not going to name anyone. But there were guys. There were guys like, and honestly, sometimes, it was not even the tall, big guys, who naturally takes a lot of space on court. Sometimes it's just some normal guy who just did not clear, and you would have to fight your way in, and just like, so that's when it's getting frustrating and a little complicated as well for the referee to just try to have the game like very fluid, and that's in this way there's a lot of stop and start, and we don't want that in squash. That's the world.
And I went to the World Championships of squash a few years ago in Qatar, and you do see some players, they like to put a bit of the pressure on the referee as well, complaining about the other guys not getting out their way or being too rough. It seems to me, and I've not really played the sport, that it can be quite a mentally tough sport as well as physically tough.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular you do to prepare, or anything you do for your mind with the sport?
So two things. Yes, it is very much the mental side, very much part of the performance, and that's why you need to get used to that, and you need to get more mature to be amongst the top guys. So it takes a little while, and that's why you see now there's so many guys over 30 years old still top 10 in the world. Okay, the number one, who's Greg Gauthier, or the reigning, he's been world champion. He's 35 now. He's been dominating the sport. So it takes a little while to understand and to have that, to be able to be strong enough, to stay focused and just not losing track of that. The referee is part of the game, so you can try to, get him a little bit of influence and try to like put some pressure. There is a mind game. There is definitely. So that's why in those big matches you have now like a 3 referee system. So it really dilutes all the discussions. Yeah.
And I mentioned Qatar there, Thierry. Of course, that was one of the biggest wins of your career back in 2004 when you won the World Open. Is that your greatest achievement in the sport, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think so. That has to be the greatest. Beating an English player who was the number 1 when I played him. So I was number 2. He was number 1. That was the dream final, and then I regained the status of number 1 plus the title. But it was even sweeter because 1 year before that I lost in the final the World Open to Amir Shabana from Egypt, and I learned my lesson, and then I was probably the best moment in my career. I did do well in some other like major tournaments, but from coming from, like a French island, I thought it was not bad. Yeah, it was not bad.
I think that's more than not bad. That's pretty amazing to be the best in the world. And you were world number one for most of 2004 and 2005. What was going right in that era for you?
Right or wrong?
Right, I was asking right. What was going right during that time? Because it sounds like everything was going pretty well.
It was amazing. It was just amazing. Just and I just want to point out that being world champion or runner-up, I mean, in France, it was massive. It was just massive. It's just the attention, the media coverage, and everything. It's crazy. One or two, it's just it's just a big difference. So I did enjoy it very much. I gave a lot of my time to promote the game and to and I really did enjoy that, honestly. The hard thing was to maintain that rank and that status, and being always the one to beat. So that was less enjoyable, honestly, because I could feel a bit more pressure. I could feel, because you're the one seed, and you need to deliver every time. So in a way, good, but also it's tough as well to manage.
Yeah, there's always hundreds of people chasing, but there's only ever one person really being chased, isn't there, when you're at the top?
Yeah, and it takes so much work, I think, and when you get there, it takes so much work. Yeah, it's like being one or even top 5. If you want to stay there, it is very hard. Yeah.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Thierry will be back in a moment. If you've enjoyed this podcast so far, or you've enjoyed other podcasts and want to help us to continue to produce this content, then you can do that by heading to patreon.com/best in the world. That's patreon.com/best in the world. And that is where patrons can help support creators. So I am the creator of the Best in the World podcast, and you are the patron who wants to give a monthly donation so we can continue to produce this content. And it starts from as little as $1 a month, which works out at like 25 cents an episode. We'd really appreciate it if you do decide to do that. If you've done it already, thank you so much. That really means a lot to us. So that website, one more time, is patreon.com/best in the world. All right, let's return to the conversation with the squash World Open champion and former world number 1, Thierry Lincou.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
I want to talk about equipment, and you worked quite a bit with the Technifibre brand, and I'm mainly asking this because I've been speaking to quite a few Winter Olympians recently, and they were talking about the importance of their skis and their snowboards. In particular, I spoke to a snowboarder called JCJ Anderson, and he is now giving up the results just to try and find things that he can improve his snowboard and just make his snowboard better. Was that something similar you were doing with Technifibre, and how important was a racket, or is a racket, to a squash player?
Yeah, it is very important. I think it is a sport of really precision too. Okay, you need to place that ball like in tennis, like in a lot of sports. You need to place and put that ball away and like in the target. So you want to have like your weapon has to be like just spot on for you. The tension of the string is really important. The grip is really important. The balance of the racket too. You have rackets too heavy, in the head, some of the racket too heavy at the bottom. So you need to find the right balance for your style. Some people like very light frames where you can maneuver, very easily. Some people want more power, so they want more of the heavy rackets. Depending on the style, okay? I used to work with them very closely, and I was so picky. I think they still remember. And like when I had to change, let's say every 2 years, the color or the theme or the cosmetic, well, I always wanted to keep the same frame. And even when they were changing the paint, it had to be the same weight. And I made their life miserable, I think.
What was your style? What type of racket? How did you have your setup?
So mine was like the weight was 150 kilogram, and I did like to have a heavy, heavy, yeah. So to really gain more power, more weight on my ball. And I think that's how I was able to put so much pressure, and that gave me so with the kind of looser strings to feel the ball. So I hated the tight tension, tight strings. So that was my setup. Overall frame pretty rigid, but very like kind of a loose string. Yeah.
But it was your ability on tight shots, wasn't it, Thierry, that gave you your nickname?
True. Yeah. Exactly. TT, my nickname, TT Tight. Exactly. So yeah, I used to be so obsessed with that precision, like, yeah, because in squash, you don't want to play the ball loose in the middle of the court. You really want to play that ball as close as possible to the side walls. So the opponent has to go a lot of like distance, to get the ball. And I was renowned for my precision, like down the wall. So exactly, if you have like a bad equipment, bad racket, you could I would feel it right away if something was off. Yeah.
Now, a good friend of mine is a pretty good county squash player, and he was telling me that the game has actually changed quite a lot now compared to the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Would the game now suit you, or would it not suit you if you were in your prime right now?
I think it would. I think all the guys would adapt and would be able to adapt. Honestly, I mean, I think my style was I was pretty aggressive in the middle, like volleying already. So I think I would have. I would be okay with that with this current generation, and being well, because I was pretty like quick and explosive. But if you had that style, which is more like playing at the deep game and patient game and steady game, I think that's it would be a problem for those guys. The game has picked up, the pace has picked up a little bit. So in general, I think that it's like different sport. I think everyone was good enough to be able to adapt the training, and with everything accessible nowadays, you can do some changes. I think it is possible. Yeah.
And you were recognisable for your long socks, Thierry. Was that just a style you had, or was it some sort of superstition?
It's funny because I was the first one to wear the socks, and now it's everywhere. It is everywhere. But so I'm pretty happy with that. But it was after an injury, believe it or not. Yeah. So it was a style, but it was truly some sort of like prevention stuff. I didn't want to hurt my calf again, and that was my first injury. I was 30 years old. That was my only first one, like muscle wise. Yeah.
So hold on, you're now telling me that everyone else is doing the long socks, and we don't have the Thierry Lincou sock range that you can buy at shops. We need to change that. We need the Thierry Lincou socks.
Oh man, but I mean, it proved it. Yeah, it's been proven to be pretty effective. Yeah.
Fantastic. Did you have any superstitions, by the way?
Well, I used to have my little, routine, and I used to pray a lot as well. That really calmed me down, and I used to love the time where I was on my own and relaxed, and I could think. Yeah. But I always wanted to be ready with exactly the same. The same method, the same routine. Yeah.
What proved to be the winning method. Well, it's been so great to talk to you, Thierry. Thank you so much for your time today. Before you go, can you let us know where we can continue to follow your journey on social media, please?
So it's on my fan page and on Facebook, right? And that this is it. This is the only thing. But I have to get better at it. So, but my fan page, Thierry Lincou.
Perfect. Well, it's been so great to talk to you, Thierry. Thank you for being on the show, and thank you for being the best in the world.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Superb stuff there from Thierry. As I mentioned at the start of the show, I've spoken to two previous squash players on The Best in the World with Richard Parr. Go back and listen to my conversation with Laura Massaro and with Jenny Duncalf, both absolutely wonderful interviewees who we learned a lot from on The Best in the World with Richard Parr. All of the previous episodes of this podcast are on acast.com/best. They're at sportocchino.com and they're on iTunes. And we've spoken to many different sports stars. Perhaps you want to learn from the shot put Olympic champion Michelle Carter. Maybe you want to learn from the Olympic shooting champion Richard Folds. Maybe the canoe slalom Olympic gold medalist Joe Jacoby. All really good interviews which you can listen and learn to help your own sporting ambition or everyday life. I'll be back with you next week with another world champion, Olympic champion, world record holder, or world number one. But until then, I hope you have a great week. Goodbye.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.